Hello and welcome to Lockdown Beers and Rugby Chat. You know what? Yesterday there didn't seem to be enough on, so I didn't do a special audio one. But today there is lots to talk about. We're going to have a chat about Fijian Drua and Moana Pacifica. There's a couple of games, obviously the USA versus the All Blacks. We've got Japan versus the Wallabies. We've also had all the NPC games. Nonu has signed for a team for next year, so we'll have a chat about that. Obviously rumoured to be Moana Pacifica and also rumoured to be Major League Rugby, so we'll tell you how that one's gone. There's been some talk also about the Nations Championship making a re-emergence as World Rugby tries to push that as well. So lots to talk about today on the old beer front, and it is the Spates Gold Medal Ale that I've got today. I'll be cracking that open in 60 seconds at exactly 5 o'clock. Obviously, with this lockdown, we don't be drinking too early because it could all get a little bit silly. Let's be honest. So yes, that's what we'll be talking about. Hope you're all staying safe. Hope you're all following the lockdown rules, and hope you've all got yourselves vaccinated as well. We're all pro-vaccine on here on this show, folks. So please do that, and then we can get back to normality as soon as possible. I did not expect to be doing over 50 of these lockdown beers, but we're on to now 52 or 53 episodes of doing this one. Yeah, this is the 53rd. Yes, this has all gone on a lot longer than we expected. So, as I say, folks, please get yourselves vaccinated and let's get back to normal as quickly as possible. Let's make that 90% target here in New Zealand. Let's get past that. Make 95. Let's try and get as many people as possible vaccinated. So yes, on the rugby front, as I say, lots to talk about because you know what? It's beer o'clock. 5 o'clock it is, and time to start the wind down at the end of the day, even though it's not been a work day, folks. And neither is tomorrow, because tomorrow obviously is Labour Day. So we've got a long weekend, so people not even logging in from home to do work. Well, if you are, I hope you have a good one and then do wind down at the end of the day with us. Joining me for a chat, it's Boa. How are you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you. It's a bit cold and nippy here. I've just been out there in the estuary, as you can see. So quick change clothes and glad to be here. I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone feeling a bit warmer than I am at the moment.
I'll be honest, I've not been outside today, and I have had the fire lit indoors. So yes, I am warmer, but not feeling as good about myself. Having done all the work you've done to help the estuary and help the environment and stuff. So yes, you've definitely got 1 or 2 extra brownie points than I do. Locked up.
No, I tell you, look, it's a labor of love. Someone has to do it, and I just happen to be one of those people. But yeah, no, look, plenty of action. So let's get stuck right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, I saw yesterday that Fijian Drua have already started their pre-season training over there in Fiji. So that's good to see, to get all the local boys on there and getting that fitness work ahead of the season. I mean, one of the problems that a lot of the New Zealand Super Rugby franchise are going to have is a shortened pre-season because first off, I mean, obviously the Blues, a lot of their players are in lockdown, and all the other squads, they're watching the NPC overrun by a month. So, advantage Fiji and Drua there, and good to see them taking full advantage of that.
Oh, look, brilliant stuff, because this is exactly the type of handicap I've been talking about for months and months and months. I think these teams, particularly based out of the Pacific Islands, competing against some of the more established competition franchises, they need a jump start, So from a coaching point of view, I guess giving these boys more time together gives more time for preparation, get the combinations right, get their fitness, strength, and conditioning right up there, and also work on game plans and tactics. So giving them as much preparation, and I hope this will be the blueprint for the Pacific Island test teams going forward as well. The more preparation and more time together they can actually achieve and get under their belt, the more prepared naturally they're going to be. And I think this is going to kind of tilt the tables in their favor, purely because, as you rightly said, some of the New Zealand franchises, for example, they're going to have very, very little preparation time in leading into this. And of course, hopefully the Drua, with their preparation time, they can actually get some warm-up games going as well, probably against some of the local clubs, and hopefully against some of the franchise teams a lot ahead of time.
And considering that apparently Fijian Drua have lost out on between 10 and 15 players due to how long it took to get them their unconditional contract. This, according to Hale Tipo, who is the chairman of the Pacifica Players Association, Pacific Rugby Players. Wow, that's a mouthful. But look, it does a lot of good work. They're 10 or 15 players short, so look, all the preparation they can have is basically all the better on that one. I don't know if you saw that he also said that apparently the Fijian Drua and also Moana Pacifica, they're trying to turn those, or they've made suggestions to World Rugby that those become capture teams for Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga. Obviously, Fijian Drua for Fiji and Moana Pacifica for Tonga and Samoa. Look, this will be the first time a club side or a franchise team was a capture team. What do you think of that one then? That once you've played for Moana Pacifica, that's it, you're captured to either Tonga or Samoa.
Yeah, look, I have my reservations about that because, again, essentially what you're doing is ring fencing players and forcing them with certain limitations on what they can and can't do. I'm a firm believer in freedom of choice, and I think there will be some players, they'll take a different route. And of course, there will be economic ramifications as well, because as you know, if you really want to make big bucks, and we've seen this in the past, some of the most talented players who've been, who have heritage from the Pacific Islands or born, have gone on to be naturalized in some of the tier 1 nations. So I have my reservations about it. That said, I can see where the sense is. I can see where the streamline continuity, what they're trying to do, and then roll it on to the test nations, so to speak. But yeah, look, I'm 50-50 on it, really. It's really up to the players. If the players collectively agree and say, yeah, actually, we want to do this, I think that's great. But I mean, look, Hale Tepole is a heck of a nice guy. It'll be interesting to see what sort of conversations have actually happened behind closed doors, or whether this is a very autonomous decision which has been pushed from somewhere or the unions.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? I've not. It's the first time I've read about it. First time I've heard of this kind of concept. Previously, your England Saxons or your A teams, your secondary teams, have been the capture teams for New Zealand. They have previously nominated the Maori All Blacks as their second team, rather than necessarily the sort of All Blacks 15 or whatever or those sort of sides. So an interesting one. It's become less and less. We've seen less and less players getting captured by the secondary teams over the years recently, as those secondary teams don't play as much, put bluntly. Your English Saxons, Irish Wolfhounds, the Welsh A team, all these teams don't play that often anymore. So, which is a shame, because I think those teams give young players the kind of some exposure to what it means to come together for a representative team. But the capture piece has been an issue in the past. So, again, in some ways, I just think that the top team should be the capture team, just the first 15 and the first sevens. So, we'll see how it pans out.
Of course, Paul, another blueprint or template I can highlight as an example is the Jaguares, and the Argentinian Pumas, so there's similarities there. But again, you have to look at player welfare, player burnout, overuse of players in high performance environments. Seasons can be long. And of course, you want to get your best players on the pitch as often as they can. At the same time, you have to manage your minutes, which is something, for example, the teams like the All Blacks, the Springboks, and also the Wallabies have done really well. So, look, it's going to be interesting to see. And my take on this whole thing, with particularly Fijian Drua and Moana Pacifica, is the strategy on capture teams or ring fence teams in the progression or the pathway to test status representation. I think it's going to be largely an emergent strategy. I think the players will have a large say in this, and of course, economic factors will come into play as well. So, I'm gonna hold reservations on this, and we'll just wait and see how this whole thing fans out over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, just be clear, folks. The Hanky Warriors wasn't a capture team for the Pumas or for Argentina. So basically, if you played for the Hanky Warriors, that didn't mean you couldn't play for another international team if you weren't already captured. But what they did do is they just chose to only hire players who were Argentinian and who were part of the national setup. So that was their hiring choice. A bit like the Fijian Drua. I think that initially Fijian Drua will be 100% Fijian. Whereas Moana Pacifica will be 80% Tongan Samoan. For example, apparently there was a bit of a hoo-ha around Lincoln McClutchy's signing because he is not eligible for Samoa or Tonga. We weren't clear whether he was or wasn't, but no, apparently he's not. So interesting, there's a little bit of a hoo-ha around his signing, but I think that has quietened down a little bit. But as long as there are only 5 players who aren't eligible for Samoa and Tonga within that squad, then I'm happy that they are following through on what they said they would do. Clearly, if you stack all of those 5 players in one position, i.e., fly half or first 5-8, basically the number 10 jersey, then you're going to need some local boys. The national teams do need number 10s, so they've got to come from somewhere. So you need a bit more balance, and that's why you see someone like Ireland, for example, saying that across the provinces there can only be 1 international player per position. So if, for example, Ulster have a foreigner in the number 10 jersey, that means the other 3 provinces aren't allowed to go out overseas and hire someone in that jersey. So to make sure they've got the player depth for their teams. And that's part of what we're talking about Moana Pacifica being, is creating that player depth for Tonga and Samoa. But anyway, we need to move on and have a chat about some other things. According to Hale T. Poll, there is also the Nations Championship is back on the agenda from World Rugby. Apparently, there's an option 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. Something that we'll go into a little bit more detail on Tuesday night on the Driving Maul show if we can find out some more detail. But I say World Rugby rolling that one out again for their meeting ahead of the November International. So it's going to be interesting to see what does or doesn't come of that. Nobody else has talked about this, so interesting that he has decided to go public on this when no one else has, and he's spilled the beans.
Look, that's right. I'm not going to say anything more, so hopefully he doesn't get in too much trouble. Oh, Haletipole. You heard it first here.
Well, yes. Well, it's first on stuff, to be honest, but there we go. That's where we're stealing it from. On that one, Nonu has been rumoured to be going to Moana Pacifica, but we'd heard rumours that he was going to Major League Rugby. And, hat tip to Stephen Harris. He's got this one right, because Nonu is going back to San Diego Legion to play in Major League Rugby next year. He will not be playing for Moana Pacifica. Look, I don't think it really is a player that Moana Pacifica needed. I think they've got plenty of midfield options. So I think, not a bad decision. I think lock is going to be an area they need to be using those overseas roles for, rather than midfield. But he would have been a good draw card to get bums on seats, wouldn't he, Bo?
Yes, that part I would agree. He'd probably sell a few jerseys, autographs, and get the kids in, and maybe they show a highlight reel of him barnstorming before kickoff. But I think from a player development and future planning point of view, is probably the most ridiculous thing to do. So I'm pleased for Ma'a that he's off to Major League Rugby, i.e. MLR. And of course, it's starting to look a little bit like one of those retirement funds where all these former stars, they kind of move on. I mean, it's not the most competitive, not the most intense of competitions. So managing minutes is not going to be too much of an issue. I mean, we've seen guys like Matt Ghetto do really well in MLR. And I'm starting to see their silver hairs sort of pop up. And, you have to start questioning, what is the motive of signing some of these former superstars? this sort of thing happens in professional boxing. Former heavyweight world champion will fight for some kind of ABC title soup sort of thing. So hopefully rugby is not going down that line, because rugby is, physically it's a lot more demanding, particularly when you're playing against younger players. But yeah, look, I think Moana's done the right thing. And look, with the greatest respect, because Ma is one of the greatest All Blacks, we've seen in our generation. I mean, really, he doesn't need to be playing rugby again, because he's done it all. And
Go on, look, he doesn't need to be playing rugby for East Coast in the Heartland Championship. He's clearly doing it because he enjoys playing rugby.
I get that. I completely get that. But as I said, particularly against some of these younger, bigger guys, it's there's always a risk and reward. So I really hope Maha knows what he's doing. I'm pretty sure he does. But now look, for MLR, congratulations. They can boast that they have one of the best All Blacks in the midfield, and no doubt he's going to be in the crowd. And no doubt he will score a few tries. He will run through a few of those midfield defenders, as we saw this morning. So yeah, no, good stuff. Pleased very much for Ma'a as well as MLR.
And look, I mean, both say a little bit about the retirement village for MLR. Look, if you think about some of the players who used to get signed for Japan, it used to be a retirement village up there as well. But now you're seeing players like, I think was it RG Steinman was up there. You've got current internationals, particularly Springboks, and other players going much younger up there. So it takes time to develop, and we will see in the sort of 5 years, about the 5 year time frame, something like that. We will see players who we think are fringe All Blacks. Instead of going off to France, they'll be going off to the USA. So it will be a place where we will be losing players to again in about 5 or so years' time. Because look, the American market is the biggest market in the world, economic wise, as China's just taken it. But from a sporting point of view, it's the biggest market in the world, and we're going to see it will keep on growing, and it's going in the right direction. So yeah, players like Matt Giteau, Adam Ashley Cooper, Nonu, cash in now, because you know what, it won't be available for some of the older players like, say, a George Bridge or say I don't know, Will Jordan. When they come to the end of their career, Major League Rugby will not be knocking on will not be available for those sort of players.
Yeah, and Paul, I can see where this is going. In about 5 to 10 years, pretty much the entire Eagles team would probably end up being a naturalized New Zealand 15 or 23, because, as you rightly said, because of the economics and talent pool countries like New Zealand have, most of these guys, they are going to go overseas. They will sit their residency requirement, and they will end up playing for them because the money is right and the prospects are right. And, in a talent pool such as in New Zealand, Aotearoa, there will be drowning. So this is a lifeline for some of these players on the fringes.
Yep. So that moving on then. So we've had some NPC results this weekend. Obviously, we had the Bay of Plenty versus Northland game was postponed, but we still had 4 games this weekend. It's kicking off on Friday night with Otago versus Canterbury. Otago getting the surprise win there, 22-20, just nicking it at the end. I didn't give them a hope. I'd already checked out, but Stephen Harris jumped on them at a nice price on the old TAB and got some nice money out of it. But it's worrying side to Canterbury. This Canterbury team is definitely not the side it has been of the past decade. This is not the kind of game they would have lost 3 years ago.
Well, it is a very, very alarming drift in form. I think Canterbury's biggest issue is they're very, very predictable. They seem to be playing the same pattern week in, week out. And, they were saying, if you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result, it's just not going to happen. So if they want a different result, they probably want to change what they're doing, change the activity and on-field execution and tactics. So, yeah, for me, just too predictable. And what Otago really did was, they were just playing cavalier sort of festival-style rugby. They threw everything at them, and they got the bickies. And I think that is a bit of a damning indictment against Canterbury. Take nothing away from Otago because they fully deserved the victory, but serious problems with this championship-winning franchise team, and I think they need to make some changes like pretty quick. And I did read an article, I think it was on Stuff, and the heat is really on Coach Ruben Thorne, and I would tend to agree a little bit on that sort of sentiment because, as I said, they're very predictable. They keep doing the same things, same patterns. And if you looked at how Otago defended against what Canterbury doing, they knew what was coming. So, yep, problems at headquarters. Hopefully, they can make some changes. And I'm yet to see, and I'm yet hopeful that Canterbury will dish out some of that championship-style rugby. Well, they need to do it like now.
Look, I think we'll be seeing a coaching change there at the end of the season, and I can't see them spinning things or turning around that abruptly. To be honest with you, so great, so really good win for Otago there. Taranaki, they continue their good form, beating Manawatu 47-35. There to show they are still the form team, and the final competitive game meant that Hawke's Bay locked up the Ranfurly Shield for the season with a 41-14 win over Waikato. Look, Waikato looked like they were going to get back into it at times, but this Hawke's Bay team, even losing players like Ash Dixon, as quite a few provinces now are losing players who have got overseas contracts early. Dylan Nell's another one that's headed over, that's played his last game as well for Otago. So. Look, impressive performances both the Naki and the Bay.
No question, and I think both these teams have been very profitable for us. I think if all you fans out there, if you've been following particularly our Driving More show, I have been consistently tipping and singing the praises of Taranaki as well as the Magpies out of Hawke's Bay. The reason is they've figured out what their weapons or their strike weapons are, and they play very consistent patterns of rugby, which encourage those weapons to come right into the game. And I think both from an improvement point of view and also consistency point of view, the Naki and Hawke's Bay have really entertained spectators. They play entertaining rugby. They're rugby which is easy on the eyes and you want to see more, and they just love scoring tries. Whereas some of the other teams, we've just been through talking about Canterbury. And also Waikato, I have to say, a bit disappointed because they've got the manpower, they've got the tactics, but not consistent enough. So from both entertainment and also improvement point of view, no question, the Naki and the Hawke's Bay, long may it continue. And it'll be interesting to see where all this ends up.
Yeah, look, it's a surprise. The Naki didn't necessarily start the season well. They really got things going, and then the wheels have fallen off again. So not really sure what's going on there. Clearly, look, they are living in Tauranga at the moment, so that could be causing some of the players having some sort of family issues and stuff that might mean they can't get their heads in the game and be worrying about family. So that might be part of it, but. It's a confusing one as to their inconsistency this year. Finally, we had the non-competitive game the non-points game between Wellington and Southland. Wellington taking that one 24-22. These games have been a bit difficult or a bit strange when you've seen a whole host of players getting their debuts, and it really has been used for fringe players. So not too much that I think you can read from the non-competitive games in the NPC, but good to see players getting a run out, basically.
Yeah, look, it's always nice to see players, particularly homegrown players from the province, get a run. So, look, whilst it had little to no meaning as far as points and NPC, the points table, etc. Yeah, it's always nice to give some of these youngsters a go, and it was a bit of a glorified club game, so to speak, from both provinces. I thought Southland, they had a few chances, close game, but it's always good to see some rugby, and very happy for Wellington Lions because again their form's just been sort of up and down and patchy. And end of the day, I'm sure they won't be complaining because it goes down as a W, and victory is victory.
Yeah, it's one. I'll be honest. I gave this one a skip because A, it clashed with the Japan versus Wallabies game, and B, I had my girls for this weekend. So this was one that I thought, that you could afford to skip this weekend. Simon makes a good point that the cheaters, the South African team, not a team that cheats. Initially, I read it and thought, hang on, which province is he referring to? But no, he's referring to the cheaters over in South Africa. They have set up, obviously, they've been kicked out of the URC or the Pro 14 to allow the Bulls, Lions, Stormers, and Sharks in, which has left them without a competition. They were hoping to do something with Georgia, but I guess COVID's got in the way of that. It looks like they've set themselves up a bit of an international series with teams from Spain and Romania in there. Look, South Africa has a history of provinces getting kicked out of tournaments, and the Lions did, for example, and they ran a series of kind of invitational games to keep their team together, give the team to play things for. So good to see that the Cheetahs doing that. Hopefully they're getting help from the SIU as well to keep them going, and we'll see how they where they re-emerge. I mean, look, the Force, another team that's got kicked out, kept themselves going through invitational games and then got to come back. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Cheetahs, do something similar somehow. Then we've had the two international games this weekend, two games outside the window. The first one was the Japan versus the Wallabies, where the Wallabies got up in that one. This was a strange game to watch. Look, and part of it possibly is also that is getting used to the culture of the Japanese crowds, because it is a very different. The crowd noises are very different, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. As I say, it's a different culture, and we should accept that they support their team their way, and that's absolutely fine. A bit like people who complain about booing of kickers in New Zealand or in the USA. Look, that's the culture. That's the rugby culture there, and the fan culture there. It's fine. If you want to be quiet at home in UK, that's okay. But overseas, if people want to boo, they can boo. It's different cultures. So, watching a game where the crowd noises are not what you're used to can alter how you actually enjoy the game. But
it is, it reminded me of watching a serious game of ping pong, where you get raucous raptures of applause break out, and then these periods of silence, and it's kind of weird. It's almost like it's difficult to describe, but as far as rugby cultures go, look, there's no right and wrong answer here, and it really depends on the locality. When in Rome, do as the Romans. So look, it is what it is. As far as the game goes, I honestly thought the Wallabies were very lucky to get away with that flattering scoreline, because it was right up till the end, Japan were right in it. And it was a bit of a faltering performance. Both sides, there was a very high error rate as well. One thing I have to say is I was very, very frustrated watching the game, how the breakdown was policed, because it looked like none of the players, particularly from the Wallabies side, there was no propensity of them wanting to stay on their feet. It's what you call the good old-fashioned bridging technique, where arriving players just basically lay and pray on the tackle player, and there was absolutely no attempt of actually holding your body weight up. And I think that did disadvantage Japan quite a bit, because it's to me it's just pure and simple illegal. Overall, the game was.
It is. Players just generally don't keep their feet at all in at rucks. You go watch a game, folks, from 10, 15 years ago, and all the players are on their feet. They're not reaching down for the ball; they're just trying to drive over it. And I think we need to get back to that, because at the moment it's just a farce.
It's diabolical. It is. Yeah. It is really affecting the game, I have to say, because World Rugby, their stance is they actually want to speed up the game. But what's actually happening and how the game is being policed is creating the absolute opposite effect. So for me, it's quite negative, and it's actually slowing the game down. That said, have to give to Japan as well. They've stuck in and they fought right to the end. It was an error-strewn sort of game. I think they just lacked a little bit of athleticism and physicality in certain critical areas. And of course, there was a few kicks at goal which they missed. Now, had these gone over, been a very different story. But as far as Wallabies concerned, yeah, look, scratchy sort of win. Can they be happy about it? I suppose they won 5 in a row, but the nature of the victory is, a little bit iffy. I mean, imagine if the All Blacks were to win a game like that, they'd be absolutely shredded to bits. So overall, a bit of a stop-start game, had its moments. Last 5 minutes was very, very exciting. And as soon as the Japanese crowd break their eerie silence and get right into it, it's a different ball game altogether.
Yeah, look, I mean, Joshua in the live chat goes, Japan is no longer a padding test to Tier 1 nations. Rennie will be okay with the result. With the result, absolutely he will be. With the performance, though, look, Japan, well drilled, really played well, but you nailed it with that lack of physicality. What that means is a lot of the tackles are passive tackles, and they are going low, which is good from a safety point of view. But what that does mean is that players like Quade Cooper have a free license to run at the line, get their hands free, and give offloads and let them put players through. Now, whilst I get it for some of the bigger players who are running in, just put them down. For players like Cooper, you can't let him do that. If he does that, he's going to have a field day and you're going to get opened up. You need to hit him hard. And I think lack of physicality really hurt Japan. And I think that Australia, if their passes had been going to hand and they weren't passing into touch on the edges, they would have racked up a lot more points. And they will be Dave Rennie will be angry with the execution of his team. As you say, the number of mistakes they made with handling of that ball, they will not be happy with. And I think lots of passing drills, lots of timing of timing of support line drills will be in the menu for the Wallabies over the next week or so once they've flown over to Europe.
And also, Paul, I have to say, the Wallabies of old, the large parcels and large amount of time where they were just sort of going side to side, and they were trying the same tactics of playing, 3 hands, move a couple of faces, and they weren't actually getting any positive meters. All they were going side to side, and they get turned over. Now, if it was a more experienced, more physical side, and also a team who had a reliable goal kicker, and unfortunately, the Japanese first choice kicker, who was Tamura, who was supposed to play first 5, comes on off the bench, plays fullback, doesn't take the kicks at goal. Again, would have been a very, very different result. But for me, the slight red flag for the Wallabies is that they tend to play this pattern, which is very ineffective, and they keep doing it against different oppositions, not getting any results. So that needs to be looked at and possibly utilize a territorial kicking game.
I'm going to disagree with the fact that they've only lost 1 game when they've not been playing the All Blacks during Dave Rennie's term shows that it is effective against anyone who's not wearing black jerseys. So I'm going to disagree a little bit on that one. I think one of the things that the one good thing to come out of this for the Wallabies is that, again, it's just more game time of combinations together, which is what Dave Rennie is clearly doing. Moving on then to the All Blacks game, the USA versus the All Blacks. Look, I did this little spreadsheet which shows you in a timeline as to when the tries are scored. The blue lines show you when an All Blacks try was scored, and the red when the USA scored. Starting from top to bottom. As you can see, the All Blacks put 4 tries in the first quarter, or even 5, and this game was clearly gone fairly early on. And they'll be happy with how that was going. They won't be happy with giving up a try just before half time, where they basically didn't have pillar defence there, and Sam Whitelock allowed himself to be dragged a little bit wide, giving space for gone blank. It begins with A. I want to say Osberger, but it's not. It's something like that. Anyway, to nip through and score. And then in the second half, look, there's some pretty big white gaps of white there, showing you that the All Blacks were on track for a score of around about 120 odd, but only just sneaked over the century mark with 2 very late tries. That shows the execution in the second half definitely went away. They couldn't keep their shape with the substitutions, and also, to be fair, look, the USA didn't give up at all. So, job done, 100 points, but definitely things to work on in that second half from the All Blacks, Bob.
Yes. Look, to call this a test match, look, I'm going to be very blunt. It was farcical. I don't think having test matches where one team can rack up a cricket score is going to do test rugby any favors. The only cool thing was, and I did tip this last weekend, the first hat trick. It was easy money. Will Jordan. In reality, Will Jordan should have scored about 8 tries because he was the nucleus of most of their attack, particularly with those inside balls and also creating that second man play out wide. Brilliant game. I think he's, as I said, he's destined to become a star, if not already. Look, there were lapses in execution, but you have to understand, the starting combinations, particularly the halves combinations, we've chopped and changed, I think 6-7 times, and players are getting run time. What I really liked about this performance was that guys like Luke Jacobson, Papali got a bit of game time, and also, the backs, particularly Richie Monga, he brought out the full bag of tricks. So entertaining game, and I think financially this would have served the All Blacks very well. So well done, bravo to them. But as far as progressing the game, as in the game of Test rugby, I'm not so sure these type of games are actually going to do anyone any favors. Hopefully, we don't see too many of these sort of mismatches in the future, because at Test level, the very fact that we are hearing 100 points is just, to me, it's absolute sacrilege.
Okay, the similar thing happening against Tonga earlier in the year, where they couldn't have their first team because of MIQ and other things like that involved. Look, there needs to be games between Tier 1 and Tier 2 nations. And I'll be honest, this year has been the massive exception for the All Blacks, and the fact that they have played a whole bunch of Tier 2 games. Normally, they will play one at most a year, okay? Because what do? During the mid-year window, which has moved from June to July, they will have a Tier 1 nation or 2 Tier 1 nations will come and tour for 3 games. They'll then play the Rugby Championship against Tier 1 teams, and then they'll go across to Europe and play Tier 1 teams in the end-of-year window and not give Tier 2 nations a game at all. The only reason Tier 2 nations got a game this year, let's be honest, during the mid-year window was because Italy pulled out of coming over to tour. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got games, and Scotland. Why did we get this game in the USA? Now, they've not said it publicly, but funnily enough, it's the final year of the AIG sponsorship. Coincidence? I don't think so. AIG are responsible for the previous game in 2014, I think, and also were responsible for the game that the All Blacks played against Japan. So look, we may say, oh my word, we've got a name on the jersey, and people might be upset with AIG sponsorship, but at least part of what they've done is get the All Blacks to play Tier 2 teams. Now, is that purely altruistic? No, it's not. It's because Japan and the USA are their big commercial markets. It's where they want to see their name. So it is for a commercial reason, but at least it's happened, folks. So let's so that's with the end of AIG sponsorship, I would be surprised to see the All Blacks going back to playing USA again anytime soon.
And Paul, also something I have to say is, look, I know it's a horrendous mismatch. At the end of the day, you can only play what's in front of you, and in any scope, to put 100 points in 80 minutes is, that takes skill, no matter how bad the opposition. Because I'll bet you my bottom dollar, if it was the Wallabies or another tier on side, they'd probably struggle to replicate a scoreline as that, because most of these other teams don't necessarily have the skill set to be able to attack consistently like that out wide. So, yeah, look, it'll be pretty disheartening to look at the scoreline if you're a USA Eagles player. But, steep learning curve. And keep in mind, once upon a time, if you recall, in the 1995 Rugby World Cup, I think it was Simon Culhane. He set a personal scoring record playing first 5, and it was pretty much another experimental side. The All Blacks played Japan and they put 134 points on the board against them. So that was 25 years ago, but look at where Japan is now. So who's to say that in the year 2000 and let's see, how good is my maths? 2045, the USA would be a team who would have beaten the Springboks, upset a few other teams, and who knows? So onwards and upwards. But well done to New Zealand Rugby for landing a bit of a jackpot. And interesting enough, as you said, it's the COVID year. People have been. I don't recall a year where rugby-wise, both on and off fields, people have been so busy. So it's going to be interesting times ahead. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I think the USA have got the pieces in place to progress quicker than Japan have done because of Major League Rugby. Now, finances are going to be an issue around being able to fund the national team. They went into basically bankruptcy or bankruptcy protection just a couple of years ago. So, look, it's not like it's a everything's great in the USA, but things are heading in the right direction. You do wonder why I've gone blank. You do wonder why the USA has slipped back a little bit. They were definitely in a better position about 3 years ago, and they've slipped back a bit under, which is a shame to see. Part of that might be the fact that the Americans Rugby Championship doesn't exist anymore, which gave them 5 proper games every year during the Six Nations window. So look, there's things to improve there, but there are some what do you call about it? There are some building blocks in place for that one. We move on then, and the All Blacks will take on Wales next weekend. Remember, apart from the returning players of Dane Coles, Sam Whitelock, Richard Mwanga, and Sam Cane in this side, none of those players are first choice starters that started for the US, started for the All Blacks this weekend. So we might see 19 changes to the match day 23 compared to this weekend. We could see a lot of changes in that because, I say, a lot of those players are not the first choice ones. And you're waxing lyrical earlier about Will Jordan, but he has, for some reason, even though he has a fantastic try scoring record, has fallen out of favour with the All Blacks selectors or coaches. And rumour has it he doesn't follow the game plan. Let's hope he did so this game.
He surely did. He surely did. If you look at the numbers and stats, I mean, it was 6 try assists, and he could have, he could have easily scored half of them by himself, but he didn't. And of course, those potent, the real potent runs on the inside ball. You're talking, 12 plus run meters before the first contact, and I think it was 7 gain line breaks. So it's going to be interesting next week, and good luck to Wales. You will certainly need it. I hope the Dragon brings the fire because, the fire can go out real quick coming up against the All Black side.
The Wales are the Six Nations champions, but they will be missing all of their overseas players over the border players in England, for example. So first and second choice fly half, for example, from last year are both missing. But then again, Gareth Hanscom is back from injury, which has been great to see. Also, they do have a bunch of injuries, but then again, it does feel like Wales have a starting 15 injured the whole time, unfortunately. So perhaps have some question marks around player welfare. We'll see what we'll look forward to that game next weekend.
We sure will. And Paul, I'm going to be very blunt about this. Even if Wales, the reigning Six Nations champions, did have all their finest Kingsmen, they were still going to get a good old-fashioned hiding because that's just how it's going to be. So there's going to be a bit of pain coming next week. But from the All Blacks point of view, it's just, making sure they get their execution right and consistency. But I'm pretty sure they won't be taking anything for granted because there's a lot to play for this group of players because there'll be a lot of culling eventually once you have to roll on. Because, as I said, this level of talent pool, it's inevitable that there will be some drowning. So all to play for as far as positions and spots go.
Absolutely. So, folks, don't forget, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. with the Lockdown Beers and Rugby Chat. Yes, it's a public holiday, but we'll see what news for those comes out from those very few rugby reporters that are actually working tomorrow. So let's see what gets written. So we'll bring up to speed with all of that. I think also Moana Pacifico are talking about announcing 3 players on the Monday. I think it was Monday, or it could have been. Maybe they'll take a long weekend as well. Maybe it's Tuesday. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But Boa, thank you very much. Time for you to go inside and warm up.
Yeah, it is bit cool. Yeah, stay safe, everybody. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, folks. Stay safe, get vaccinated, and